3 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, so it's time to start. Afternoon and welcome to the Regulatory Committee. My name is Councillor Jenny Fauci, I think you know that. Alongside members of the committee, I'm joined today by Ciara Keller, Democratic Services Officer, and Claire Enyon, Planning Manager, and Paul Reid, Environmental Health and Licensing Manager. The form, yeah, I'll just read through it actually. Committee members, when invited to address the meeting, please ensure your microphone is switched on so that it is picked up via the live audio feed. When you've finished addressing the meeting, please turn off your microphone immediately. Please ensure you've switched off or to silent or all your devices will not interrupt the proceedings. Please note this meeting is also being broadcast live, and members of the public not in attendance today are able to view the proceedings. We now move to the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies from Councillors Mills, Petrovic and Wally Hoggins.
Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Do any committee members have any interest that they would like to declare in relation to items on the agenda? If there are any points members wish to raise, please indicate. Otherwise, now we'll go to the minutes. So, if there are any points members wish to raise, please indicate. Otherwise, I'll take the minutes as noted. No. Thank you. Minutes of subcommittees. If there are any points members wish to raise, please indicate. Otherwise, I'll take the minutes as noted. Thank you. Public participation number 5. None received from the public. Councillor questions. None received from councillors. So item number 7 will go directly to the enforcement update. I invite Claire Enyon to present her report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is the regular report that you should be familiar with, the format. I start on page 23. It's got a breakdown of the cases received for the last 4 years. You'll see for the last year, 2023, we had 577 cases. I've done some research before this committee, and of those 577, 141 were declined to investigate. So perhaps the numbers aren't as high as what the table might have suggested. I am going to look into patterns more about the decline to investigate to see whether we're recording those correctly, because for the year before there was only 56 that we declined, so obviously there's been a significant jump in the last 12 months, so I need to have a look into why we're doing that, whether it's the right type of action. But just to give you some reassurance, we only decline to investigate after some initial investigation to check that we should be declining. We don't just rush into that decision process. On page 24, there's a table which shows a breakdown of some of the historic cases. We still have the oldest case dating back to 2016, which is relating to a scheme that requires highway work. So it's something that we're waiting for the county to actually implement those works. The total number of cases on hand as of this week is 275, which is the highest it's been for a good number of years. We did get just below 200 within the last 12 months or so it is exceeding. We've also got some change in resources which are going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Our most long-standing officer, who's been with us for 20 years, is retiring in 2 weeks. That post will be replaced by an officer that was on a temporary contract, so we're not going to have a net increase in officers. If anything, there will be a reduction. We've also had a temporary officer that's with us until May. That person will be leaving in May with the post not proposed to be filled. So we'll be down to 3 enforcement officers from May, just to let you know. In terms of enforcement action taken, despite only having 1 senior for most of last year, we did still manage to take a lot of formal action, which is on the table on page 25. So we served 6 enforcement notices, 6 breach of condition notices and 4 temporary stop notices. This year already we've served 7 notices, so it's more than what's in the report. We've also served 7 planning contravention notices. So we are now trying to proceed with action on cases that we've identified for action. But as explained at previous meetings, we do have to be mindful that if there's an appeal against an enforcement notice, we have to make sure we've got the capacity to deal with those appeals. Fortunately, we've not had any appeals on any of the notices issued since the end of August. But we did serve a notice last week, which I am anticipating an appeal for, and that will likely to be a big appeal when it comes through. So we're just holding fire at the moment in terms of serving any new major ones to make sure that we can deal with them. In terms of the enforcement appeal decisions, we're still waiting for the 2 that are set out on page 26. Linked to the site that's referred to as Palmer Manor, we did have a previous appeal decision for another breach on that site, and I also mentioned a decision to decline to determine an application on that site. In February, we received confirmation from the High Court that they'd refused the application for permission to apply for judicial review against that decision. However, we've now received notification that they've applied for what's called a renewal hearing, which is to seek consent to apply for judicial review. So they're basically challenging that initial High Court decision. So again, it seems to be a delay tactic not to comply with the enforcement notice that was issued some time ago now. We are finding a pattern now of the cases where we are taking enforcement action, they're not actually complying with the notices. So with the financial money that we've got a pot of money left to spend this year, well, for the next 12 months. We are looking at other ways of spending that money to potentially take direct action where notices haven't been complied with, rather than having it on additional officers within the team. So in terms of the report, the recommendation is that the report be noted, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire. The two, I think it's the 275 cases outstanding. So you mentioned that the number of cases coming in has increased. So is that due to resource, complexity of the issues, or the volume of cases, or all three? We'd be interested just to know why those are running at the levels they are, or what patterns you can see.
It's a combination of a number of factors. We are getting more complicated breaches being notified to us, or certainly ones that come in. We're not finding reasons that we can close cases that perhaps we did before. Although we've declined to investigate some cases, so for last year, 124 were no breaches. So of the 577, 124 was no breach, which is probably slightly lower than what it had been in previous years. Before, I think it was 2/3 were no breach. Yeah. 77 we negotiated last year. So what we're finding is, even when we serve the formal notices, because people aren't complying, we're actually better off negotiating compliance from the start rather than proceeding straight to a notice. Because by serving a notice, it almost gives the person an extra year not to comply, because if they appeal, it's taking a year to get the appeal decision. So by negotiating, you've actually got the upper hand if they are willing to enter into those negotiations. But yeah, for some individuals, that isn't appropriate, and you do have to go straight to enforcement action. Yeah.
Brief. Thanks, Chair. So just for clarification, because you mentioned the 124 declined again. The final figure of 260, those 124 will be included in the closed figure anyway, won't they? You will have closed those off. So the 275 that are outstanding doesn't include that number, does it? There's no confusion in the numbers.
So the total that were closed that were received in the same year, yeah, let's have a look. I'd have to...
Put the microphone on. It's just a thought that the closing number, if it included that, it'd be distorted because effectively they're closed.
So you'll just come back to us on that figure.
What I'll need to do is see how we report the breakdown of why cases that are closed and the patterns to make sure that the figures tally. Yeah. As part of the peer review that we're looking into and looking at the local enforcement plan, I want to look at the data anyway for the last couple of years to see what the trends have been. So I'll be doing that exercise as part of that review. So.
Can I just ask a question? As you are now coming to 3 full-time staff, is that going to be sufficient to carry on the operation with a degree of success that you're having at the moment, or will there be a dip in being able to follow all these cases through?
Under the structure, it's 3 enforcement officers who will do the day-to-day investigations on anything new that's reported. We also have 2 senior planners in the team, and it's the 2 senior planners that progress cases to formal action, so they will help draft the notice, and if there's an appeal, they will do all that appeal. So we've got a combination that we're doing the day-to-day investigations and then progressing to formal action. We've got a schedule of cases that need formal action already that we're working our way through. We just have to bear in mind potential appeals. But there will be a very high workload for those 3 enforcement officers because that 275 will have to be split between those 3 enforcement officers mainly. And previously they only had a caseload of 50. So it's going to be a very significant increase. So they'll have a high volume of existing cases whilst also having to deal with new cases that get reported. So we will have to prioritise very strictly according to the local enforcement plan, where we've got the critical trees, listed buildings that we do respond to immediately, significant that we will then respond to in the next priority, and the desirable ones might have to fall off to some degree if they're not causing significant planning harm, and that's where we'll be contacting the ward members to seek to close those cases or to decline to investigate.
At our next meeting, could we have a fairly detailed response on that as to how that's working, because I think I'd like to know that the resource that we have is actually managing to cope with the workload. Thank you.
I think that's what you... Oh, the mic's just gone on. Oh, thank you, Kira. Spooky. So, yes, I think we need to have that for the next report. Claire, you also, I didn't quite catch, you said something about we were holding fire on a number of investigations. Could you just clarify that again, please?
It's more in terms of taking formal action. So we've made a planning assessment that something is expedient to take enforcement action, but if it needs an enforcement notice, we're having to almost put them in a queue, because otherwise, what happened last year, we had 3 appeals all arrive at the same time, which then meant that the senior couldn't do anything else. So we have to try and phase them. But luckily, when we serve an enforcement notice, we know that they only have 28 days to appeal, so we can diarise them every 28 days, and that's what we're trying to do at the moment. And because we've got 2 seniors, there is a little bit of flexibility compared to what we've had for the last 12 months when we only had 1 senior in the team.
Again, I think maybe a little bit more detail on how things are prioritised for the next meeting might be helpful, Chair. I just wonder, the last point, Claire, is that you mentioned a number of staffing issues, but in the report it says there are no staffing implications. So perhaps if there are staffing implications or resources issues, that should actually be in the report, because I think it's where it says there are no human resources staffing implications associated with this report. There clearly are, and I think that should be in the body of the report. You mentioned the peer review. It would be helpful, I think, to know more broadly when that final report is being published and when we will be seeing the action plan, because that is now nearly 6 months since we first had that PAS review. So I think a number of us are concerned more widely about the rather long unforeseen delay in that. But that's a wider point, but clearly it does affect the enforcement. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I won't comment on the Planning Advisory Service report. John Careford may wish to comment, but just in terms of the staffing implications, I would be cautious about putting too much information in a public report, because the last thing we want is for the public to realise that we haven't got as many resources, because otherwise it would encourage more people to do breaches, and at the moment we are getting a very high number of people who are doing blatant breaches, and we certainly don't want to encourage further such breaches.
But I think my point is that reports that come before this committee should be comprehensive, and I think there either are staffing implications or there are not. Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Just very, I've probably forgotten more than I've remembered here, but we don't have the blue papers anymore, so we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And I understand, you know, the need for most of the time there's very little change from meeting to meeting. Are we planning to publish those sort of every 6 months or every year, so we do see an update or a movement?
Going through you, Chair, I moved away from producing those lists because I was worried that the committee was starting to consider individual cases without a full report on those cases. So this committee should only be considering enforcement case that's been referred to the committee under the scheme of delegation, so that's why you no longer have the blue sheets. You will obviously have cases that require consideration by this committee, but they will be an individual case on that specific item rather than lists of multiple cases.
Happy to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much, Claire. That's great. Thank you. So on to item 7. Item 8, environmental health and licensing update. I invite Paul Reid to present his report. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to read it verbatim. The report's there for you all to see. However, I will extract a few salient points, if I may. Firstly, starting on environmental health, section 2.1, food visits by our food team. We're on track to hopefully complete all of our programmed food visits for this year. Following COVID, it's been quite difficult. The recovery plan has been difficult. The standards out there have dropped significantly, which has meant increased work for my officers. And it means sometimes the downgrading of some of the premises to get them up to the required standard. And I think some premises are fearful for themselves that their standards have dropped, and it's only when we actually go and do the inspections do they really realise that their standards are below their own expectations, as well as those from environmental health. So we are on target, and there's very few local authorities who are on target from a lot of the group meetings that I go to. So, so my food officers have been working extremely hard to make sure that they're fulfilling their quota of inspections, and I thank them for that. Moving down onto 212, the National Food Crime Unit did send a request in to us. It's really unusual for them to send a request in, especially when there's little substance to it, and we did investigate that, and we didn't find that there was anything really untoward actually happening at the premise. So it's nice that the process is being followed through, but I do like it when my officers get their teeth into something a little bit juicier than just a nothing complaint. The next item down, a food complaint. A shard of plastic in a national pizza chain was found. The issue was in the actual boxes that they come with, and the interventions of food officers has meant that the head office was informed and the primary authority, and as a consequence, the storage boxes for the pizzas have been removed and been replaced with a totally different supplier. So we was able to marry up that piece of plastic with a gap in a box, so it was quite fortuitous, really. The final item on the food point of view is with regards to the Victorian market. Just to say that my officers did spend some time looking at the Victorian market. It does do a lot of food outlets there. We inspected 21 high-risk food premises at the time. The majority of the independents were good, in a good standard. However, we did find that some weren't, and they've been given a final opportunity to rectify matters, and I emphasise that word, final opportunity. I wasn't happy. I made it crystal clear that I wasn't happy, and my officers have had a separate meeting with them since, and they tell me there's going to be improvements for this year's event. I, like most people, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I will see it when I believe it, and we will be taking robust action if there aren't improvements. We cannot compromise on food safety for one of the largest events in our district, and I make no apologies for my team robustly enforcing the food safety legislation.
A question there. These are food outlets at the Victorian market. If these food outlets come to the ordinary weekly markets, monthly markets, are you still looking at them in the same way in case they're not coming up to standard?
Yes, Chair, we do look at them in exactly the same way. All food businesses get registered with the Home Authority, and then we as an authority look to do some routine sampling and inspections as and when they come into our district. So we do this at numerous events up and down our district, and we will go and do some sampling at them. Moving on to the noise. An ongoing issue which has lasted for over 2 years. We've served an abatement notice. We've served 2 abatement notices on this company. This company has been very successful in actually batting this off at court and been delaying and delaying till we get to hear it in court, which hopefully should be later this month. However, in 2 years, the residents have seen no acoustic improvement. So they have been subjected to this ongoing statutory noise nuisance, for which we have the powers to deal with, and dealing with us is serving the abatement notice. It's rare that we serve 2 abatement notices on the same company in the same period, but there seems to be very little movement, cooperation from the company concerned. I'm concerned that I feel we're not doing our best for the residents, but in the other hand, our hands are tied. We can't do any more. And I think it's important that we do the best for the people that we serve. We are public servants, and I would like to explore what more we can do, and I will hopefully do that when we're in court later this month. That may involve some sort of injunction. That may involve us seeing what we can do, and that always comes at a risk, because we're going to be spending money on barristers to go to court to see if we can do things. I would like to protect the residents as much as possible, and I think it will be money well spent, but we will await the outcome of the court hearing later this month, and that will really determine how we move forward. The protection of the residents is my primary concern, and I'd like to think we can do better than what we have done. But a lot of that is in the court's hands because of the delay, which has really not helped the residents in this particular instance. HS2, we've got ongoing issues with HS2, and we're always going to have, in all honesty, until such time that it's really completed and all the ancillary works are completed. The TBMs have nearly all finished now, so the tunnel boring machines have nearly all completed. It's the ancillary works which are going on, which can actually be a bit of a delay. So to prevent night working, we've allowed some additional working of a Saturday, and I think we've just allowed some additional working on a Sunday as well, just to prevent some night working. I prefer people to be disturbed in the day and to get a good night's sleep. Sometimes we have to acknowledge that some working outside of hours is going to be achievable, and I can safely say that my team have done their best to try and prevent any night working as and where possible. 2.3, public health burials. We're seeing a lot more. We've seen a doubling of the numbers for when we compare the same period for last year. It's very sad that we're seeing the numbers that we are seeing. It costs us, the public, about £1,300 per public health burial. And when we're seeing double the number, that's double the expense. And the public purse is not a infinite pot. That money has to be found from somewhere. The risks of not doing that are, we can't take that risk. It is a public health risk if we sadly don't take the appropriate steps at the appropriate times to prevent disease. And that's what we're tasked to do. And my team will do that as well as they can. But it does pose a risk moving forward if the public don't meet their obligations and set out what they want doing when it comes to that sad time in the life. That means the council is going to actually foot that bill, unfortunately. But we have seen an increase in numbers for that. Private water samples. We've completed all of our private water samples for this year. So we've sent those, our annual return, to the DWI with the largest amount of data. I think it really tested the capacity of our IT to complete that, but complete it we did. However, there is a caveat to that, and with some additional guidance which has just come out, it's likely that a few other sites will be added to the private water supply list. So even when they get mains water and then it's redistributed, that may then be classified as private water. So we could see our private water samples double next year if the DWI guidance actually makes it to law. So we could see a doubling of that. Planning consultations. We do a lot, and we used to get involved in the technical aspects, be it contaminated land or be it acoustics. That does tie up our resources for the team. It's nice to get in at the initial stage if we can, to prevent a nuisance occurring at a later stage. So prevention is better than cure, but it does tie up our resources to do that, and it's important that members are aware of that. Dogs seems to be quite topical at the moment, especially with the XL bully restrictions. I won't read it out because it's there in front of you, but that legislation has come in now. We in the district, we still haven't seen an XL bully. We haven't collected one, and really, should we be, if it's a dangerous dog anyway? Is that a police matter, or is it us? You know, if it's straying and it's an offence for an XL bully to stray, and if it's not microchipped, if we collect it and we put it into one of the dog homes, are they going to accept it to start with? What is the consequences for that? And if I can tell you that our fee for collecting a dog last year was £17 a day, that the dog home would charge us. That fee has gone up to an initial fee of £127 for the first day, and then £47 per day thereafter. So we're quite fortunate. I think we had 24 or 26 stray dogs last year. So the consequences are quite high for us, but not as high as some authorities that have a lot of stray dogs. They're going to see a big financial outlay from a dog point of view moving forward. And that does pose a financial risk to us, again, moving forward. The service request figures are there in front of you. Nothing tends to stand out for me in those figures, but I'm here should the members want any additional information. Moving on to licensing. The majority of our licenses sort of go out in November for the annual renewal fee. And traditionally, our debt recovery has been quite limited due to the fact that we've got a lot of work to do. So we tend to think about getting the licenses out, undertaking the enforcement, doing the routine inspections. And the debt recovery is a side which was mentioned in one of our audits, probably 3 or 4 years ago. We do a debt recovery plan throughout the year. However, the quieter December, January period, we tend to try and recover as much as we can. And I'm really glad, and I said this to my officers only this morning, that they've recovered £25,000 this year, which would have gone outstanding. Our debt recovery is so good that our outstanding balance at the time of coming to this committee today is less than £2,000. So that is all that is outstanding at the moment. And that's my team, and it's my licensing officers in particular that have done an outstanding job chasing the invoices on top of their day-to-day work. And I did thank them for that. And it's a good effort. I don't like carrying debt. I don't like it in any way, shape or form. However, the officers have gone over and above and collected quite a lot of money this year, so well done to them. They actually are involved, the licensing officers, in the task and finish group as well, which are looking at licensed premises, which I think is a good thing as well. We should know where they are and do our level best to sort of keep up with them. Hackney carriages and private hire. The Levelling Up regeneration bill was quite an interesting read. If you ever need to go to sleep at night, it is a very interesting read. However, one of the issues in there was that it could be a county council function moving forward in a Levelling Up bill, which would mean that we would lose the opportunity to put an age policy on there to vet the drivers. That wouldn't come to the members, but we would be subjected to those that are at the county council. So the county council will be setting the standard. That standard may be the same as the one we've got. It may be less than the one we've got. The NCAP rating for our vehicles is high because we've got an age policy. The pollution from our vehicles is better than most because they're all Euro 6 vehicles, and I can't say that for everyone. So we may lose some of that local option, but it may go to the county if this is passed moving forward. Animal welfare, we've got 10 businesses outstanding at the moment from an animal welfare which need to get inspected by the end of March. We're well on track, and I'm happy that my team will complete those inspections. There's nothing on here with regards to our boat inspections. This is the time of the year that our boat inspections are done because come Easter the boats will be out and on the river. We have a new boat inspector, and the feedback that I got was very positive from the new boat inspector this morning, and I will update members more when I've got more hard facts with regards to value for money and what we're getting from the new boat inspector moving forward. And finally, our scrap metal, unlicensed scrap metal dealer in the district. People think they get away with a variety of things. We try to enforce as much as we can using the legislation that we've got. And one scrap metal collector was contacted, seen collecting. We brought him in for an interview. We had a chat. Somebody felt the edge of his shirt. I think it was his collar. They got him in. One of the enforcement options for us is to take action, take no action, do a letter. In this instance, we gave him a written warning. He was asked to pay his outstanding bill, which was a 12-month fee, and that was then backdated. So if people get away with nothing, it sets a nice, even, level playing field for everybody to play by. And my officers thought that was the best enforcement option in this particular instance, and I definitely agreed with them. The figures are there for the licensing issued over the last quarter, and the team dealt with a total of 390 service requests since the last December meeting. They've closed off 377 requests. Therefore, at the time of writing this report, there were 13 active service requests. Thank you, Chair.
Before you move on. Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the service request for EH, if we might, and in particular the reduction from the same period last year in the number of requests seems to equate with the reduction in the planning requests, if you like. And I noted that you said it would, and we've spoken about this before, it would be it's ideal if you're consulted at the earliest stage. Considering that the number of requests in both cases in overall and with planning seem to have gone down by about 200, and we see planning applications coming through at still a fair rate, why has that gone down, Paul? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I can definitely say that has gone down to the fact that we've highlighted this to the planning department. Some of the planning consultations that we actually deal with in the past have been, dare I say, no, don't, Paul, I will, niff-naff and trivia. So from an environmental health point of view, I'm not concerned if they've got a new window in there. I'm not concerned that the fence is raised by a certain amount. It's a planning matter, it's a planning concern, but it's not an environmental health concern. So the reality is, I think sometimes some of the planners were sending us more than they needed to, and to be fair to them, that was mentioned to their manager. So the manager spoke to them, and they're sending less through to us now. So we can actually see the wood through the trees. We are dealing with the bigger, more meatier, more technical planning applications. So we're being consulted on those, but they're not sending the more minor ones through, so hence the reduction in that number.
Public health burials. Usually I assume these are where people have no next of kin, as you say, but that doesn't mean to say that they don't have an estate once they've gone. Do we ever recover any expenses from the estates of these deceased?
Yes, through the chair. If they do leave an estate, we go over and above to do the best service possible for the final stages of their life, because there's a strong likelihood that the council will recover that cost. So we will try to put on a funeral for them if that's the case, or the crematorium, and the public can attend that. However, it is still their estate, and we still need to be sensible in what money we spend on the funeral. But we do it with a sense of responsibility for that deceased person. So if they have an estate, we recover the money. Sometimes, sadly, that recovery of that funds can take up to a year, sometimes even longer, for the estate to get sorted. But a lot of the time, it is the fact that they have no next of kin, they have no money, they have no anything, and it's quite sad to go into somebody's home to see a television, one chair, and a bin and a bed, and it's a sad reflection on life, in all honesty. But in those cases, we can't recover that money, so we undertake a direct-to-cremation usually, because it's the cheapest option for the public purse. and I have to think about the public purse, because we can't be seen to be wasting, squandering money, but we still need to have a bit of dignity with what we do.
Could you, Paul, tell me a bit more about the difficulties you come across in your private water sampling, and what happens when you have a bad sample, and just describe to me a bit about that process?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, we tend not to do the samples ourselves anymore. We've got a contractor that will go out and do the water samples for us. When those water samples come back, they're either positive and everything's good and they tick all the boxes and meet all the criterion, or they don't. When they don't, we try to see what the issue is, and then if it's something which can be addressed by a simple UV light, a filter, or there are other measures that need to be undertaken in order to get that sample up to a suitable drinking water standard. If we get the cooperation, fantastic. However, we're duty bound in some cases to serve a notice to actually make sure that the notice is served and then the water standards come up to an acceptable standard by a certain time. And that has to be a reasonable time period. The majority of the time that is met, and most people meet that standard well within the time period which is set for them to do so. In the meantime, while they're coming up to that standard, we usually put a do not drink the water, happy to wash and do everything else with it, flush the toilet, but you will have bottled water until such time that it comes out, and that will be said on the notice. So that's how those are dealt with.
Thank you, Chair. I see you have 3 pavement licences have been given out over the year. I was wondering, whereabouts are those being, what areas are those for? Because I was aware not so long ago there was issues in high street councillors and I think residents getting emotionally involved about certain businesses spilling out onto the pavement. Are those in those areas at all? Thank you.
Yes, through the chair, I don't know exactly where those 3 licences are. I should imagine the majority of our pavement licences are in Stratford, so I would imagine that they are there. There's a process to follow. It's quite a straightforward process. It's online, submit the application, the officers will look at that and then deal with it accordingly, making sure that the standards can be met. And if members have got involved in the past, you're very correct in saying that, and we're here to give advice to members before they give that advice out to the public should they need it. Thank you.
Thank you. As always, Paul, thank you very much for very good reports. Just a few sort of comments, if I can say. Picking up your comments on the Christmas Victorian Market, I read the SAG report, I saw your comments, and I sensed your frustration about repeated offences. It was raised at some length at overview and scrutiny, and the concerns were also raised at Cabinet. So I think just to say that those comments in the SAG have not gone unnoticed. And a number of members have raised concerns, as Councillor Grocott knows, to ensure that were the market to go ahead again next year, you'll be over it like a rash. If I may say. Picking up the environmental noise, I just wonder, you mentioned there's nothing now that can be done until the court case at the end of March, but I wonder at the end, after that court case has been heard, if it would be possible for this committee just to have a brief update from you, just so we know where we are, if that wouldn't be too much trouble. Third, just on the public health burials, managing the balance of dignity and cost. Can I just ask, does anyone from the District Council attend these public funerals? And just my last one is back on the planning consultations. I see that some officers are undertaking additional training, which is great. Mr. Barrell and I have spoken several times about ensuring that we have sufficient budgets for additional training, because I think it's a great way of increasing staff retention, increasing yeah, ensuring staff retention, increasing skills, making the place a better place to work. So I think that, I welcome that. But I just wonder, as I mentioned the PAS review earlier on, whether as part of the planning service review, we should look at where some of these responsibilities overlap, should some of the stuff, some of the issues that are coming to environment, should they be dealt with under planning rather than coming to you? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And through the Chair, I'll sort of go those answers in reverse order, if I may. Planning consultations, I think the majority of them should come through the planning process, in all honesty, and I'd love to say that I've got resources for an officer to sit there and answer each and every one. The reality is, we haven't. And the reality is, you need, it took me 20 years or so to get to grips with the planning terminology, the phrases, all the contaminated land, the acoustics, and to train staff when they're coming through the system. And I think you were right, you hit the nail on the head. It's get the recruitment right, get the retention right, and then get the development right. So we've attracted them, we've got them, we've trained them. Now let's move them that step forward, let's expose them to other things. People see environmental planning as a chore, a difficult subject, especially when you're looking at contaminated land and acoustics especially. It is very specialised, but we're EHOs and, you know, we've got a broad brush degree, but we definitely need that additional training to sort of bring us up to the standard that is needed so we can happily deal with the consultants that we're up against on both of those fronts. And indeed, to actually share some of that knowledge with the planners. We have the experience in the team. I would say that there's 3 of us that are good, one in particular is very good, and it's sharing that knowledge with the team and exposing them to things and developing them so we're more rounded, we're more complete. And I think that's what we need to do, and I think we're doing that very well, but I would say that because I'm the boss. So I think that's one. Attendance at public health burials, we used to attend, we don't anymore. There's a cost to opening it up to the public, so we don't attend anymore. So we're trying to reduce that cost. An update on the noise case, I can happily do that, and I can bring that back to the next committee if you want, or do you want something sooner? Yeah, right to that. I can make that happen. I will do
Acceptable.
that. Okay, I will send that out. And the Christmas Victorian market, I can't remember what the question was.
It was less of a question than a comment that your concerns had been noted.
Yeah. So, and thank you for that. And it's important. I chair the SAG committee. Although our powers of a SAG are nil, in all honesty, and they are nil. It's a group of professionals, police, ambulance, fire, emergency planning, local authority, and highways in some cases, who get together to give the applicants the best advice to make their event as safe as possible. That's what we're about. We want to encourage events into our district, but they definitely need to be safe. So we offer advice on that. If they're not safe, then individuals in the SAG can take the appropriate action should they see fit. And we will endeavour to make every event as safe as possible, but some events, this one in particular, sort of goes beyond my remit because we're a partner in it. So from a health and safety point of view, that event would come under the HSE to actually enforce. I do pass on my knowledge, skills to those in the markets team and my head of service, who I have to say has done such a good job in actually trying to move this event forward. And I take my hat off to her for doing that. And it's nice that you've acknowledged that. And it's nice that the thoughts of the professionals in the SAG are actually being listened to. So thank you for that, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Just, if you wouldn't mind, Paul, at the last meeting, there was a couple of items on there. One was to do with the food business, and this was the facility, they'd still got the facility to produce milk. And you were saying then that you keep the committee informed of progress in the case. I wonder if we could just have an update on that. And the second one, if you don't mind, was to do with, I think it was from memory, it was to do with a gun club and a shooting club of some kind. And there was noise, shooting ground and farm, here we go. And we'd served community protection warning letters on both the shooting ground and the landowner. And I wondered whether that has now resolved and gone away as well. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. And then through the chair, if I may, going from the last one first, it's really going to be, we need to wait out on the shooting range one. It's sort of closed season at the moment. They're not going to be doing a fat lot until the spring. As and when they do that, it will resurrect itself and we will be in a position to obtain evidence and to progress and move that forward. As and when, I've made a note in the book, as and when that does raise its ugly head once more, I will let you know. With regards to the food business and the milking parlour, the FSA did serve a notice to prevent him from being registered as a milk producer. I do know that his family have made contact with my staff about getting him back up to milking. There's always some hoops for people to jump through when you undertake a food business. Those hoops were put at a low level in some cases due to the age of the person concerned, how often the staff have been dealing with him. However, the bar has been raised, the hoops have been raised, the standards have been raised. If he does want to produce milk moving forward, he will need to tick every box before we will permit that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just really was, I think you've already answered the question in response to Councillor Curtis, but it was just really discuss the health and safety issues of the Victoria market, which have been also been discussed at Cabinet and OSC, and just our relationship with being a regulatory authority and the health and safety issues, but you've already answered that. Thank you very much.
If I could, just to clarify that point and just to drill that point home, the Christmas Victoria market is part of the market forum and the markets contract. Because we're a partner, the district council can't enforce on itself. So therefore, I have no enforcement powers as I do on every other event which we're not a partner of. Yes, it's definitely an advisory, and it would be the HSE that would be investigating anything if anything were to happen. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions on this item? Thank you. We move on to item 9, any urgent business. There is no urgent business, so I declare the meeting ended at 5 to 4. Thank you all for